we're gonna give you the best variation that you can use to increase your snatch technique and hit a max PR, and we're gonna start right now. Now, when we're looking at the snatch, we've got to look through the lens of what is the technique that we're trying to achieve. If we can establish that technical model and understand our movement patterns, that can be the lens that we then would look at technical proficiency through, and then we can choose specific variations based upon what our goals need to be. So right off the bat, we have to understand what should we be doing off the floor. And if we look at someone like Quo, Yuri Vardanian, Norik Vardanian, even Loredana Toma, if we look at what they're doing off the floor, okay, we're gonna see that their knees clear back, okay? So the knees will come back. This is an essential part of the lift. We wanna keep the knees coming back. So as the bar moves from the floor to the knees, the shins get vertical, okay? So right below the knees, the shins are vertical when the bar is right below the knees. From below the knee to above the knee, I refer to this as no man's land. This is where most lifts are lost. And if you watch someone like Quo, she masters this position, okay? So from below the knee to above the knee, the bar has to stay tight, and we wanna see the hips and the upper body, the shoulders rise together. Okay, if they rise together, at this point then, when the hips and the shoulders are rising together, now we can see the knees reciprocate forward. So above the knee, I like to call that specific point the reciprocation point, but getting through no man's land is key, and that's really gonna be based off of what the chest is doing. So the chest has to rise with the hips. If you see someone whose hips rise faster than their chest, the bar will go forward and they'll lose it through no man's land. That's a key concept here. Okay, so now as we get from the reciprocation point to the hip, we wanna drive through the heels, keep that chest rising, the knees will come under the bar will stay tight into the hip, we make contact, and then we finish with a strong turnover into a rapid catch, okay? So we wanna think turnover into that catch. If we have a strong turnover and we have a fast catch, now we're gonna have a really, really good lift. So when we look at that lens, typically what I like to do is I can see a lifter and their inefficiency. I can see, okay, right off the floor, they're bumping that bar forward. Okay, around the knee, everything tends to be forward because their hips are high. Or their chest is rising, their hips are dropping, and they're actually falling backwards and their toes are popping. Or we can see someone past the knee, they flail their head back and they jump backwards. Or they make contact and they actually bump the bar forward and they jump forward. So you can start to see these errors in someone's movement pattern, and then you start to break them down and you're just looking at these technical variations of, power snatch, one box snatch, high hang snatch. You start to look at it like, what can we do? What can we use to fix this? Okay, and that's where this movement comes into play. There's one movement that we've used here at Garage Strength that has literally fixed every single problem in the snatch. Now, you get really good at this movement, and then typically when we pull it out of training, other issues will arise. It's not gonna make everything perfect, but this is a really great exercise that I recommend doing for 8 straight weeks. And the reason being is that we want to establish our upper body posture. We want to establish the technical patterns through a slow process and then follow that up with that rapid process. And so that's the unique part behind this exercise. And it also teaches us better connection with the ground. This exercise will provide us a better feeling with what we're doing, which in turn will lead to better body control and better bar path. So what is this movement? And that exercise is known as the low hang, no feet snatch. Okay, so what we want to do, and this is when I would recommend using straps, is that we can actually use straps, we can connect to the bar, and we can stand concentrically with that snatch weight. Okay, so start off with 60, 65, 70% of your total max snatch. Okay, we wanna put our feet in our receiving position. It's a no feet movement. When we do no feet exercises, we wanna put our feet in the receiving position. The next thing, we're standing at the top, okay? So we're establishing that position. We want this movement, the eccentric portion of the exercise should be done in reverse of our technique. Okay, so we're starting at the top, so we're at full extension. Now we want to go backwards and ingrain those patterns in a reverse way so that our body feels where it needs to be. Another awesome factor here is that we're going to establish that good chest position. We're going to light up our lats, light up our rhomboids, so now we have good connection with our upper body. Okay, so now as we lower, we're gonna see our hips, okay, start to come back and our knees are gonna start to come forward. Then as we get past the knee, we wanna see the knees clear back. Okay, and then we're gonna lower below the knee to almost to the point where we're about 2 inches from touching the floor. When we get to that point, we want to be very close to that starting position. But that full eccentric patterning should take you 3 to 5 seconds to execute, so you have very good feeling. On top of that, the eccentric portion will strengthen that entire posterior chain. So if we can use the eccentric patterning, 1, for better technical feeling, but 2, to strengthen the actual groups and coordination in our posterior chain, now we're gonna lead to that better optimization for our technique and for our strength gains. Okay, so now we get down below the knee, and remember, we are in a no feet movement, okay? So we don't move our feet. We can plantar flex and we can dorsiflex, but we are not sliding our feet or jumping our feet, okay? So now we get down to right before we're about to touch the floor, and then we commence the lift, and we're gonna move through that full range. Now we're gonna push the knees back. The bar will stay tight through no man's land. We're gonna push through those heels as our chest rises with our hips, and then as the bar passes the reciprocation point into the hip, that's when our chest comes all the way up, and we finish with a low hang, no feet snatch. The key concept here is that we keep our feet grounded and we just catch with those heels grounded. Our heels can come up, then we push back down. So if we have an athlete who tends to jump backwards, they flail their heads backwards. If they're jumping backwards, this movement will fix that problem. If we have an individual who bumps a bar forward and they jump forward into the snatch catch, the low hang, no feet snatch will solve that problem. Okay, I recommend using this inside of the comprehension phase and even into the ascension phase, and you could do this on day 3 or on day 4 when you want to focus on more technical movement patterns. And then as you get closer to that peak, when you get into the summit phase, you would take this out and you really start to carry over these technical gains from the variation into your competitive movement. And I would even cue your athletes, try to remember that feeling that you had coming down through the eccentric. Try to remember the feeling that you had coming off the hips into the catch. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're cueing our athletes properly, make sure they're feeling their full foot on the eccentric, make sure they have good awareness of their upper back, make sure they're loading their posterior chain effectively, and ultimately that they understand the feeling of the low hang, no feet snatch and how that in turn will carry over to that competitive movement. Because a variation will do nothing if we don't educate the lifter on what the purpose of that variation is for their competitive movement. So try this exercise out today. You can hit 6 doubles, 6 triples, 5 triples, 5 sets of 4 if you want to stay a little bit lighter. Try to build that movement pattern and see how that feels. And in turn, notice the difference in your feeling. Notice the difference in your footwork. Notice the difference in the bar path. Having that low hang and that no feet position is tremendously going to improve your connection to the ground and in turn, your connection to the execution of a more linear bar path. And that is one of the keys to hitting bigger weights. If you need help with your training, head over to garagestrength.com and you can pick up one of our weightlifting programs to help you smash some PRs. Because remember, freaks, if you guys want to become a champion, you've always got to cultivate your power. Peace.